When Battlefield 3 came out, I was still just a kid. I had been waiting for months for it thanks to the insane trailers DICE had dropped. And like many, I was blown away by the graphics that seemed unthinkable at the time, the gameplay that looked crisp, and the large-scale battles that only Battlefield could offer. I had never played a Battlefield game before, and I was used to playing games like Halo and Call of Duty, so this was a whole new world to me. Like many, I got my parents to buy this game for me for the multiplayer, and I played it non-stop. For the entirety of 2011 and 12, this was my game. I tried the campaign, but being so young, I didn't really understand the story, and only got about halfway through before becoming bored with it and heading back to multiplayer. As I grew older though, I gained an appreciation for FPS campaigns. They hit in a way other games don't. Short, 8-hour experiences that are like action movies you get to play. My favorites are the ones that really try to be true military experiences. Games like 2019's Modern Warfare or Call of Duty World War II.
Boo! You stink!
Yes, I know that game gets panned, but I will die on the hill that the campaign was great. Or, if we go further back in time, Brothers in Arms and Medal of Honor. But I've never played Battlefield for that. And with Battlefield 6 bringing a single-player campaign with it, I decided it was time to go back to a game that meant so much to me and explore a side of it I'd never properly experienced. So today, we'll be going back and revisiting Battlefield 3's up and down campaign. First things first, I hate that this game's modes have to be launched from the battle log. Who thought this was a good idea? It makes the game feel like those old online browser games you would play, and this is made even worse by the fact that a main menu actually exists, the one for the console version, and it works well. It's a small gripe, but it had to be said. Also, the max FOV you can get is 90, but that's a result of the game being a product of its time, I suppose. Alright, let's just get right into the story. Mission 1, Semper Fidelis. I hope I'm saying that right. It sees Blackburn, the game's main character, jumping onto a moving train, fighting off enemies with a pistol and an AK while suffering through many QTEs and eventually being jumped by the game's antagonist. We are then brought back in time with Blackburn being interrogated about events from his past. So, the campaign is structured as a retelling of events during these interrogations, and I'll give my thoughts on this narrative structure later, but for now, we'll move on to the next mission, Operation Swordbreaker. This level is great. Moving through city blocks with your squad from building to building, searching for a squad of Marines who haven't reported back. You are ambushed multiple times throughout before finding the Marines you were sent out to find dead on a busy street. You are then ambushed on the road as your own reinforcements storm in, and it creates a great cinematic battle as two sides clash in an all-out war right before an earthquake hits and you are buried beneath the rubble. Also, the antagonist faction in the campaign is the PLR, a sort of resistance movement led by Solomon and his associates. Alright, first thoughts are that the graphics in this game are absolutely incredible, especially for 2011. I remember being blown away back then, and it still holds up today. Battlefield has always led the way in terms of graphics, 2042 notwithstanding, and it is just unbelievable how good this game looks. And trust me, you'll be hearing me fawn over the graphics more later on. Mission 3, named Uprising, picks up where the last mission left off, with you waking up in the rubble of a collapsed building. You backtrack through the Mission 1 area, but now everything has been destroyed by the earthquake. Roads have lifted up, cars are overturned, buildings have come crumbling down, and the change to night, mixed with the PLR stalking the streets with flashlights as you sneak from building to building, creates a tense atmosphere. Even the rats aren't safe. You sneak through crumbled buildings, taking out groups of soldiers until you reunite with Montez, which at this point was a massive relief, as playing this game on hard without a squad is genuinely challenging. You and Montez then fight your way to an extraction point and are evac'd out. Talking about the hard difficulty, It feels well balanced, and it gives a nice realistic feel to the game. Enemies still go down in a couple shots. They're not made to be bullet sponges like a lot of other games do, but you are a lot more vulnerable. It forces you to use cover and pre-aim corners and rewards you for doing so. This is honestly the way the game should be played. Also, Montez, your squad mate who you'll be with for the majority of the game, is a decent character. He has a good personality to him, and as we'll talk about later, he is one of the few characters in this game who is actually memorable and has screen time. I've got to say though, holy lens flare. This was a pretty common design choice back in these days, and Mission 2 was really cranking it up. Like, why does my screen have so many water droplets on it? After Mission 2, we learn that the leader of the PLR has orchestrated a coup in Iran, and the US military have sent in 50,000 of their men in order to stop it. That takes us into Mission 4, Going Hunting. This mission is a massive switch up, and is the game's first real trip up in my opinion. You take the role of Lieutenant Hawkins, sitting in the gunner seat of a jet. This mission is a great spectacle. It looks and sounds amazing, but the gameplay is not so great. The lock-on system, for me at least, was really inconsistent and caused me to be flying around up there for ages, as every time I would manage to get the lock on, the enemies would dump flares and we would go back to playing defense. When I got it to work though, it worked well, so I know there was something wonky going on with the lock-on system. I don't know, maybe just a skill issue. Every now and then you have to deploy your flares when the beep is at the right point, and I don't know, this whole thing was just boring once you got past the grandeur of being in a fighter jet, and when you switch to lasers taking out parked jets on the runway, it's no better. I ended up playing the second half of this mission one-handed because you're just targeting enemies for somebody else to have the fun. Not to mention, unless I missed something, this has absolutely nothing to do with the main story and is so out of place. The interrogator just asks Blackburn out of nowhere, "Hey, do you know this Lieutenant Hawkins person?" Blackburn says, "Nah, fam." And then you play the mission, and it's never mentioned again. It was so weird. I will say though, listening to the communications between the pilots was awesome.
Shark 46, turn heading 290. How copy? Shark 46, good copy.
And that's another strong point of this game. The banter between soldiers and the radio chatter here is done really well. It really sucks you into the atmosphere and makes the game feel authentic. This is helped by the fact that the voice acting for the soldiers is really good. They sound like genuine people and not action movie heroes.
History is determined by the motherfucking victim.
How did you even get into the Marines?
You know what, Campo? I often ask myself the same goddamn question.
One of the interrogators gets all grumpy with Blackburn and then asks him about a nuke he found in Tehran, which brings us to Mission 5, Operation Guillotine. The level starts off with a bang, as dozens of soldiers frantically sprint down a hillside under mortar fire. Similar to Mission 2, you and your squad fight through hillsides and up into the city, working your way through buildings and up streets. There's a tank jump scare that scared me half to death, and I love the way the tank is portrayed here, as a big, intimidating force. It gives you genuine fear of it. Too bad then that it's dispatched so early on by a random NPC. There was a real opportunity here to set the tank up as a boss for the level, or this recurring enemy that stalks you through the streets of the city like it's an alien or something. Anyway, you then go on to destroy 3 tanks single-handedly, so yeah, all aura points for the tanks go down the drain. I don't know, missed opportunity. You all push through to a bank building where you discover a case containing a nuke and 2 empty slots for 2 other nukes, as well as papers indicating the PLR are planning to use them in New York and Paris. We are then sent back to the present, and the interrogators let Blackburn know that the Paris nuke ended up already going off. Something that really stood out to me in this mission is the audio mixing. It's great. It really immerses you in the world, and like I said earlier, the banter of your squad sounds great, the overwhelming feeling you get when being suppressed behind cover, the sound of bullet fire overhead, explosions in the distance, it all sounds incredibly realistic. I have to note, I was playing on the War Tapes audio setting, and it really enhanced the experience. The weapons also have distinct sounds, and for the most part, they also sound great. the 870 MCS pump shotgun may just be the most beautiful sound I have ever heard. Around this point, I also started noticing a lot of weird physics glitches. Sometimes enemies, when they die, will just be thrown up into the air for no reason. I've seen this thing happen in other games as well, like Cyberpunk, and it's usually tied to frame rate issues, but yeah, it was really distracting. Jumping to Mission 6, you play as a former Spetsnaz called Dima, who is attempting to stop the detonation of the nuke in Paris. As we know from the previous cutscene, we aren't going to succeed. And of course, since we are playing as a Russian, this mission is called Comrades. Yeah, real subtle. During the mission, you are hunting down the carrier of the nuke, and midway through, an RPG blows up a bus and your squad mate is impaled by a metal bar and dies. Now, the music and the way it's shot is acting like this is a real emotional moment, but it is not earned at all. I met this guy 10 minutes ago, and outside of a little monologue at the start of the mission, I don't know anything about him. The chase scene through the alleyway while firefights between the PLR and the police cover the roads is quite fun. And once again though, there are so many QuickTime events, and they're just straight up awful. The QuickTime events in this game are honestly horrendous. I'd rather just watch a nicely directed cutscene play out than have to press E and maybe even space or mouse button every 6 seconds. I know QTEs were all the rage back in these days, but man, do they just suck. Anyway, you kill the carrier by throwing him under a train, and while I knew this moment was coming, as it's one of the things I do remember from when I played the game all those years ago, it's still pretty effective as a twist. Turns out the guy you were chasing was a decoy, and he had no nuke on him. You look up to the sky as it darkens, and the real nuke is detonated. This is where I knew the game would have been better off ditching the whole interrogation and recount angle. It just takes the stakes away from things, as they are spoiled at the start of missions in the interrogation room. You're attempting to stop a nuke from going off in Paris, but before the mission even starts, you're told the nuke went off already. You're then thrown back in time to before it goes off in an attempt to stop it, but you already know the outcome. The game's tension would have been way higher, and this moment would have hit so much harder if you could just play through the missions as they happen. No jumping around to different times, just playing the game as things unfold. It would have made for a much more consistent and interesting experience. Again, this nuke scene would have hit so much harder if I didn't know it was going to happen. The game just spoiled me 15 minutes earlier, and the timeline is just all over the place throughout the games. It gives you narrative whiplash. One moment you're 2 weeks in the past, then back to 10 hours ago, then you're at the present, and then you're back to 2 weeks ago. It sucks, and it's just confusing. Thankfully, unlike most games, your CPU squad mates are actually useful, and they managed to save me a couple of times, believe it or not. Their pathing is smart most of the time, they use cover well and are actually useful. Enemy AI is okay too, although there are some instances where they just run out in the open, but for the most part they act with good logic. Something that was also sticking out to me at this point in the game, there's a really good variety of weapons throughout the campaign, from silent sniper rifles to submachine guns to shotguns. No two missions give you the same loadout, and it keeps things fresh. After that mission, we switch back to the interrogation room, and can I just say, the guy standing up yelling all the time, Whistler I think his name is an absolute tool.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
What is the point of interrogating someone if you don't listen to what the guy is saying and just childishly tell him that he's lying every time he tells you something? Anyway, on to Mission 7, Thunder Run. This mission switches it up again. You're in a tank playing as Sergeant Miller. The feeling of charging across the desert with other tanks is very cool, and matches the spectacle of the earlier level in the fighter jet. Helicopters flying overhead, A-10 Warthogs doing strafing runs, soldiers fleeing at the side of you as you drive through their encampments. This mission had the combination of fun and spectacle that was missing in the jet sequence. You fight into the city of Tehran in an attempt to give backup to Blackburn, who is still hiding in the bank with the first nuke at this point. Mission 8, Fear No Evil, is more of a conclusion for the last level. You roll up to the bank that Blackburn has been hiding in and clear out the enemies in front. You cover Blackburn and his squad's evac and are then subsequently overrun. Miller is taken by the PLR and executed, and again the writers try to take a hit at making you feel emotional, bringing up Miller's kid and his toy dinosaur from the beginning of the previous level. But as Miller has no character and no scenes to explore his character, as well as only being introduced 20 minutes ago, I just didn't feel anything about his death.
You will be a hero to your children too. I hope that gives you comfort.
Also, there's been a couple in the game so far, but this mission has the worst one. The turret moments. They are just so goofy. You'll mount turrets with no cover and be completely invulnerable as you mow down hordes of enemies who just don't shoot you. Like, you have no cover at all. One bullet and you're done. But nope, no one shoots you because you're on a turret. Those downsides being said though, this 2-mission run here, playing as Miller, is great, and was a real high point in the campaign for me. The mission offerings here are great. They give you varied gameplay scenarios and settings, and the mission structures themselves are intriguing and fun. The gameplay does all the heavy lifting for this campaign, thanks to really well-designed missions that offer interesting scenarios and fantasies. Whether it's flying a jet, driving a tank, stealthily sniping, or working your way through city blocks with your squad. There's a lot of variation here. These missions are also helped by the fact that all the environments are beautiful, and the game offers lots of unique areas from dense cities to sprawling deserts to lush hillsides. Okay, Mission 9 Night Shift sees you and Campo sneaking through the city of Tehran at night, assisting a squad who has been tasked with bringing in al-Bashir, a collaborator with Solomon in the PLR. You give them cover as they go street to street, taking out enemies with a sniper, and eventually you manage to extract al-Bashir, and he basically gives you all the information about Solomon and his plans before he dies from his wounds. His phone is also retrieved, which links a Russian arms dealer named Kafarov to the PLR, and the nukes they've acquired. Providing Overwatch for the squad was fun, but the mission too often devolves into you getting into shootouts. It would have been better if they had committed to being stealthy the whole time, like you were at the start, instead of reverting back to big gunfights for the second half of the mission. This felt like a wasted opportunity to do something different, and a slower stealthy sniping mission would have come as a good change of pace in my opinion. Again, I have to say it, this game's visuals are absolutely stunning. The rain effects in Night Shift blew me away, and stalking the streets at night was a visual treat. The environmental detail also stands out. The shop signs and advertising, the little stickers and posters plastered everywhere, really creates a detailed, lived-in atmosphere. Mission 10, Rockin' a Hard Place, sees you and the crew working your way to Kafarov's compound when you are ambushed by Russian troops. You move up the hill and rejoin your other troops and see a scene of dozens of Russian transport planes dropping off paratroopers. This adds a complication to the story, as now we are risking war with the Russians. Cole explains that they are probably here for Kafarov as well, and that if we are fired upon by the Russian soldiers, we are in our right to fire back. Now, this moment really added to the story, as it introduces a new complication to a story that was getting a bit boring, if I'm honest. The imagery in this mission also stands out. The realization setting in on your guys as you stand atop the hill watching the Russian paratroopers parachute in, rushing down the hill as you engage them with transport planes flying overhead, the giant tower in the middle of the field collapsing. This mission is a shocker for the enemy AI though. With all the open fields, the AI has no idea how to react, just charging forwards into a hail of gunfire without a thought. Earlier on in the story, it was noted that the commanding officer Cole was desperate for glory and would do anything to get the mission done. Throughout this mission, the squad questions him repeatedly as they don't believe they are prepared to take on such a large force, but Cole is adamant they keep pressing forward. This sort of tension is a nice addition to a story that's been sorely needing something interesting like this to happen. The story has really been kicked up a notch in this level, between the Russian involvement causing a massive grey area, to Cole's insistence on his men taking on unfavourable odds in the name of his own reputation. The squad are surprised by a Russian fighter jet, and the next sequence sees you running from cover to cover, trying to avoid its strafing runs.
On, as required.
That's fast air! Is that ours, is it? Shit! Did he see us? Did he see us?
Oh, he's doubling back. Holy fucking shit!
Hit the gun!
You manage to take down the jet with a stinger, but not before Campo and Matkovich are killed. Montez blames Cole for this, but I can't help thinking how much this would have hit if we had more character moments with these guys. Something similar to how Call of Duty World War II made you feel closer to your squad mates like Zussman. If I cared about these characters, the story would be hitting so much harder right now. Even having small scenes before missions with them instead of the interrogation scenes. More character building moments during the missions. Anything to explore these characters more. And that's where one of the game's biggest major weaknesses is. There are no memorable characters at all. Maybe Montez if we're stretching. No characters are given a chance to shine, and the characters who do get screen time, like Blackburn, Agent Gordon, and Agent Whistler, are absolutely mind-numbingly boring. They have nothing interesting to say, and no interesting stories behind them. Your squad mates are underdeveloped, and the only person who has any personality is Montez. The antagonists as well are just plain awful. They have no motivation outside of being bad for the sake of it. I guess Dima, the second playable character in this game, is interesting, but that's about it. It doesn't help that, like I said before, Blackburn is such a nothing protagonist. He's just an empty vessel for the player to occupy. Other than some snarky comments to his interrogators, he doesn't have much personality or character moments. Anyway, the interrogation after reveals that at some point Blackburn started working with the Russians. Yet another spoiler that could have just been shown in the actual missions. We also learn that Dima, the playable character from the Paris mission, is here going after Kafarov. Mission 11, entitled Kafarov, sees us playing as Dima again. Not to confuse you, but this is before he got blown up by the nuke some missions ago. Jeez, this game's timeline is all sorts of messed up. You and your two buddies from the Paris level work your way into Kafarov's compound, and man, all I can say is the RPGs are BS. They hit you with laser accuracy, and there's no way to premeditate when they're being fired off. On hard difficulty, if you even get splash damage from them, you die. And the NPCs just spam them at you. There's a cool sequence though, where you go through a firing range and targets pop up and give you jump scares, and every so often an enemy will pop up instead. You manage to intercept Kafarov as he attempts to escape in a helicopter. The mission then switches to you playing as Blackburn, later on infiltrating that same villa, where Blackburn runs into Dima, who explains to him that Solomon used Kafarov to steal 3 nukes from the Russians, and that Solomon plans to use them in Paris and New York. Dima asks Blackburn to help him and to avoid getting anyone else involved. Blackburn just believes everything Dima is saying, though I suppose he's heard the same from al-Bashir and saw the plans in the bank. Dima then tells Blackburn to shoot his commanding officer Cole so that Dima can get away and stop the Paris nuke. He obliges. Back in the interrogation room, Gordon explains to Blackburn that Solomon is a CIA agent, something that goes on to have no effect in the story, and they believe that he is acting in their interest and they have the situation under control. Getting all the information they needed, they leave the room. Oh yeah, and for some reason they brought Montez into the room? Not really sure why, outside of giving Blackburn someone to help him escape. Anyway, now, The final mission, the Great Destroyer. Yeah, pretty hardcore name. It opens up doing what I've been wanting to do all game. Knocking out Whistler. You then replay through the opening of the game on the train and hunt down Solomon once and for all. The train crashes and you chase Solomon through the sewers up onto the streets of Times Square, where Montez picks you up in a police car. You pursue Solomon, crashing into him. Solomon then kills Montez in the only scene where I felt any genuine sadness in this game, despite its many attempts, as Montez felt like the only character who had any time to shine. Then, possibly the worst ending to any game I have ever played happens. You do a short 15-second QuickTime event where you occasionally press E and space, knock Solomon out with a brick before uncovering the nuke, and that's it. Black screen.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? Bro, I'm out, man.
A scene then plays showing Dima in an apartment writing down his experience with Blackburn, revealing that he survived the nuke in Paris somehow. Like, this guy was a couple blocks away from a nuclear explosion on a train platform that probably would have collapsed and killed him if the nuke didn't do the job. Anyway, somebody knocks at the door and that's it. Roll credits. What happened here? Were they forced to cut the game short and this was the best they could do? An awful mini QuickTime event and a fade to black. No resolution at all. No scene with Whistler and Gordon realizing they were wrong about Solomon. No scene showing off what happened to Blackburn after. Nothing showing the effects that the war against the PLR had on the relations between America and Russia. Especially after both sides killed each other's soldiers. Also, was Solomon's motivations ever explained? Unless I missed something, he just seems to be doing bad things for the sake of it. The interesting angle that he's secretly a CIA agent never pays off, and there's no point to his entire character. They never explain why he's doing what he's doing, or why he turned against the CIA. This was easily one of the worst endings I have ever seen, and has really hurt my overall opinion on the game. I guess it's cool that Dima is still alive, despite the logic being off. The idea of two soldiers going rogue and avoiding a war between countries was a neat idea, but it's brought in at the end of the game and doesn't have the chance to breathe. I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting and people were fine with the ending, but to me it felt rushed and had absolutely no payoff other than, yippee, we saved the day. Okay, first things first, I will say the game was definitely the right length. It doesn't feel like there was any filler here, and it was a decent runtime. The gameplay was utterly brilliant. It helps this game was meticulously designed for multiplayer because the gameplay is tight, satisfying, and immersive. Gunplay feels great, movement is fluid, especially for the time it was released, and the vehicles control well. But man, the story is really weak. Just a typical stop bad guys plot without much intrigue at all. The only time we get intrigue towards the end of the game, with the possibility of war with Russia and Cole sacrificing soldiers' lives for his own glory, it's way too late, and the plots end with barely any resolution. These plot points needed to be a bigger focus and introduced earlier. And the ending is just simply one of the worst endings I've ever seen. It felt rushed, and it cheapened the whole experience. There's really nothing here that stands out from other FPS campaigns, and I don't see much reason to choose this over others, apart from maybe the vehicle missions. It's decent, but that's about it. The top tier gunplay and great mission structure and variety are weighed down heavily by the weak narrative and lack of any notable characters outside of Montez. It's a shame that this game's excellent gameplay and fun missions are let down by the boring plot and cast of forgettable characters, plus a horrible ending. But even with all that said, I must say, I was still surprised by how much I enjoyed this campaign. I won't go as far to say it was good, but it was decent. It has good entertainment value for those that enjoy military shooters. The feeling of fighting through city blocks with your squad, or rolling through the desert in a tank with other tanks at your side, or charging down a hill with dozens of soldiers as transport planes drop paratroopers from the sky. DICE has created a solid, grounded, realistic enough military shooter that tries its best to not devolve too heavily into action movie territory like these games tend to do. There's value here in this campaign, even though it does stumble heavily, and I will say it has gotten me more pumped to see what they can do with Battlefield 6's campaign. If I'm honest though, this campaign is absolute wasted potential. The mission structure, the gameplay, the spectacle is all brilliant, up there with the best of the best in its genre. But the lack of any story or characters completely kneecaps it. Despite my issues with it, I have actually really enjoyed this campaign. There is a massive letdown at the end, and issues throughout, but for the most part, this was a really solid, enjoyable 8-hour experience, and I'm kinda pumped to have a look at Battlefield 4's campaign as well. So, what do you think of Battlefield 3's campaign, if you've played it? Are you going to play it in the future? Are you looking forward to Battlefield 6's campaign? Let me know. Also, let me know if you think I should cover Battlefield 4's campaign before the release of Battlefield 6. And, as always, thanks for watching.